Before this story begins, take a second and subscribe to the channel. Because the stories shared here aren't just stories. They are moments where life breaks, bends, and sometimes heals. If you've ever lost someone without an explanation, if silence ever hurt more than words, then this story is for you. Now let me tell you about Ethan. Ethan had been fixing things around the house since early evening, moving from one small task to the next with restless determination. A luz cabinet, a flickering light, a drawer that never closed properly. None of them were urgent. None of them truly mattered. But keeping his hands busy kept his mind from wandering. And wandering was dangerous. Because when Ethan's mind slowed down, it always returned to the same place. The same absence. The same unanswered questions. The same name he tried not to say out loud anymore. Emily. The kitchen was dimly lit, wrapped in that familiar yellow glow that made everything feel warmer than it really was. The quiet was broken only by the soft clinking of dishes as his mother, Linda, stood at the sink washing plates one by one. She moved slowly, deliberately. The way someone does when they're exhausted but pretending they aren't. Ethan noticed it. He always noticed it. Her shoulders drooped just slightly. Her breathing wasn't rushed, but it wasn't relaxed either. And though her lips held a gentle smile whenever she glanced his way, her eyes told a different story, one filled with worry she never spoke about. Ethan tightened the final screw on the cabinet and stepped back, testing it once more. It held firm. Something solid. Something that stayed. He wiped his hands on an old rag and leaned against the counter, exhaling through his nose. It had been over a year since Emily left. Over a year since his life had split cleanly into a before and an after. And still it felt like yesterday. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't accused. She hadn't even cried. She had simply said she needed to go. No explanation. No fight. No closure. Just gone. The silence in the kitchen pressed against his chest. It wasn't awkward, it was heavy. The kind of silence that carried grief in its bones. And in that stillness, Ethan realized something that made his throat tighten. His mother had been carrying this house on her shoulders. Her own worries. His heartbreak. The absence of laughter that once filled these rooms. Without thinking, without planning, he stepped behind her and wrapped his arms gently around her shoulders. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't sadness. It was gratitude. For the meals she still cooked. For the questions she didn't push. For holding everything together while he quietly fell apart. Linda stiffened for a brief second, startled by the sudden warmth. Then slowly, she leaned back into him. Her hands remained under the running water. Fingers trembling just slightly. Ethan smiled faintly. But then she let out a breath. Not a sigh. Not relief. A shaky, fragile breath that felt like it carried months of weight with it. Ethan pulled back just enough to see her face. And that's when he knew something was wrong. Her expression wasn't sad. It was conflicted. Tender, frightened, burdened. Like someone standing at the edge of a truth they'd been avoiding for too long. Ethan, she whispered. Her voice trembled in a way he had never heard before. There's something you need to know. His heart jumped. Not with fear, but confusion. That sharp, unsettling feeling that comes right before life changes direction. What do you mean? He asked carefully, even though the floor beneath him suddenly felt unstable. Linda turned off the faucet. The kitchen grew quieter. She dried her hands slowly, as if delaying the moment would somehow make it easier. Not here, she said softly. Sit with me. And in that moment, Ethan understood this wasn't about the past in a casual way. This wasn't a forgotten detail or a harmless memory. This was something deeper. Something connected to the ache he carried every day. As they moved toward the small dining table, the air felt charged, like every quiet moment of the past year had been leading them here. Ethan sat down, his thoughts racing but his body still. He didn't know what he was bracing for. Only that whatever she was about to say would change something forever. And in that breath before the truth he felt it. That faint pull of fate. Like everything was finally about to make sense. Or fall apart. Or both. Linda sat across from Ethan at the small dining table, her hands folded tightly together, as if she were afraid they might betray her if she let them move freely. The steam from the teacups between them had already begun to fade. curling weakly into the air before disappearing entirely. The warmth that should have been comforting now felt forgotten, neglected, much like the truth she had been holding inside her for far too long. She didn't meet his eyes at first. Instead, she stared at the table's surface, tracing invisible lines in the worn wood with her gaze, gathering the courage she had postponed for months. Ethan waited. He didn't interrupt, didn't rush her, but inside everything felt tight. His chest, his throat, his patience. Every instinct told him that whatever she was about to say had something to do with Emily. The name hovered between them like a ghost neither of them dared to speak aloud. Finally, Linda lifted her eyes. They were glossy, not with dramatic tears, but with something quieter. Regret that had aged. Love tangled with fear. The expression of a mother who had tried to protect her child, and wasn't sure if she had done the right thing. "I've been watching you," she said gently. Ethan stiffened. Ever since she left. There it was. She continued before he could respond, her voice steady but fragile underneath. She said she had seen him wake up every morning pretending to be okay. Seen him go to work, come home, fix things around the house, and avoid any conversation that might crack him open. "I saw how you smiled when people asked how you were," she whispered. "And how that smile disappeared the moment you thought no one was looking." Ethan swallowed hard. He opened his mouth to tell her he was fine, that he had moved on, that it didn't hurt anymore. But Linda shook her head. "No," she said quietly. "Don't do that. Not with me." The words stopped him cold. "This isn't just about heartbreak," she continued. "It's about a choice I made, because I thought it was the right one at the time." Her hand moved toward the drawer beside her chair. Ethan's eyes followed it. She hesitated, fingers hovering over the handle as if touching it would make everything real. Then she opened it. The soft sound of wood sliding against wood felt unbearably loud. From inside, she pulled out an envelope. Old, wrinkled, worn at the edges like it had been folded and unfolded too many times. Ethan's heart stuttered. Something about it felt familiar. Not because he recognized it, but because his body reacted before his mind could catch up. Linda placed it on the table between them. The paper looked fragile, almost delicate, like it had absorbed too much emotion to remain strong. "This came a week after Emily left," she said, her voice dropping lower. "It was addressed to you." Ethan stared at the envelope. A letter. From Emily. His mind struggled to process the words. "A letter," he repeated faintly. "You mean she wrote to me?" Linda nodded. "She came by when you weren't home," she explained. She was broken, Ethan. Crying so hard she could barely speak. His hands clenched into fists under the table. "Why didn't you give this to me?" he asked. The question wasn't angry. It was wounded. Linda took a shaky breath. "She begged me not to," she admitted. "She said she wasn't strong enough to face you. That if she heard your voice, she would lose the resolve to do what she believed she had to do." Ethan's chest tightened painfully. "She said she didn't want you to think she disappeared without caring," Linda continued. "But she also believed that reading the letter too soon would only hurt you more." "And you believed her?" Ethan asked. Linda's eyes filled. "I believed she might come back," she whispered. "And I thought if she did, maybe this letter would never need to exist." Silence swallowed the room. She confessed she had carried the weight of that decision every single day, that she replayed the moment over and over, wondering if protecting him had actually taken something away from him instead. "I was afraid," she said. "Afraid of reopening your wounds if the letter didn't bring comfort." Ethan reached for the envelope. The paper trembled in his hand. It felt impossibly light, like something so thin couldn't possibly hold answers big enough to matter. But he knew better. All the sleepless nights, all the unanswered questions, all the moments he replayed their last conversation, searching for meaning that never came. Everything had narrowed to this. He slid a finger under the flap, hesitating. His heart pounded loudly in his ears. Whatever waited inside would change how he remembered the past year, and maybe how he understood himself. Slowly, carefully, he unfolded the letter. But before his eyes could land on the first line, before he could read even a single word, a knock echoed through the house. Sharp, firm, unexpected. Both of them froze. The sound wasn't aggressive, but it was deliberate. The kind of knock that demanded to be acknowledged. Linda's head snapped toward the front door. Ethan stood abruptly, the letter still clutched in his hand. Then came a voice. Soft. Uncertain. Familiar in a